Butternut Squash Deer Mash. William Hovey Smith, 2025.
This is Hovey Smith, the Backyard Sportsman. And today we are going to do a cooking video, something I haven't done in recent months because we have been busy with Hurricane Helene and freezing and other stuff about the house and yard. But we did manage to get a decent deer this year. We got one. I usually like to take 2 or 3, so I'm a little short, but I'll tell you how to get your deer now, right now, even if you don't have a hunting license. What we're cooking is a butternut squash, some cube steaks, and I have some buttermilk left over. I don't do much with buttermilk, but we're going to use it. And we're going to use it in connection with the squash and deer. So this is what we're going to do today. What I mean to illustrate here is basically butternut squash is a very interesting squash. It's not a particularly sweet squash. It is medium and it has a slightly buttery and nutty taste, hence the name. And we're going to spice it up a little bit. I'm going to give it a little bit of a Middle Eastern or Oriental flair by adding some common spices as well as this cube steak. So that's what we're about, and we're going to call this a butternut squash mash, for want of a better term. Our preparation steps are going to be pretty simple. We're going to bake the squash, and we're going to brown these cube steaks, and we're going to make the soda bread and save a little bit of this buttermilk to add to the squash mix as well. So we'll tackle the squash first since it takes the longest time. And this should have cut that off first. Now we're getting somewhere. And now we have 2 beautiful halves here. And to scoop out the seeds, all you need is a spoon. Now we have our seeds separated, and we can place these in the oven and get them started. Now that I have set aside the seed to dry, we're going to scour this. Not cutting through the skin. going to put a little salt on it. Okay. And then add some water to the frying pan, about a quarter inch or half an inch or so, just to keep everything from sticking to the pan. We're starting our mix here, and in the mortar we've taken the sea salt, a teaspoon, and ground it with a teaspoon of sugar, and also a teaspoon of the baking soda itself. Now the reaction of the baking soda and the buttermilk is what's going to actually make the bread rise. And we brown this to get all the particles uniform, so you don't bite down and get a big crunchy grain of salt or something. And for the flour, we're using an all-purpose flour, and this is a typical southern biscuit flour. Happens to be the White Lily brand, but many others will do. And 2 cups. And we want to sieve it. Our mix here okay, that's 1 cup. Slight, but 1. 2. We're going to mix the dry ingredients. And now we can start adding the wet. Not required, but put 1 egg in mine. And we have 2/3 of a cup of oil about. Do that for a starter. And our buttermilk. Obviously need more liquid. The rest of the oil. A little more buttermilk. And there we go. Now that's ready to go in the oven. Now we did not need this bread. So we're going to see if that really makes much of a difference. Frankly, I don't know, and we'll find out. For those of you who have been asking, where is the meat? Well, we're getting to it right now. Here we are, double wrapped very nicely. And we have it in paper and plastic. The new processors don't take that extra step, but this gives you very nice steaks. We can separate them here. He obviously tried to get as much cubed product as he could, so some of them was a little smaller side, which is fine. All right. And some salt. Pepper. I'm going to rub this in a little bit so I have a chance of sticking. Steaks have enough moisture in them that they'll probably absorb the salt, but of course they pepper not. Do the other side. The typical thing to do with these steaks would be to simply salt and pepper them, bread them in flour, and then deep fry them. Well, I'm going to do a little different this time. I'm going to use an egg wash, go to a flour, and this is dill wheat on the top, and breadcrumbs, put them on the sheet pan, and then cook them in the oven. The advantage of doing this is that you don't smoke up the house with frying food. So we'll see how this progresses. All right. Now those can go in at about 425 degrees now that everything else is out. We are at the intermediate stage where the preliminary work is done. And we can start putting our butternut squash mash together. The squash itself looks beautiful. I mean, that's exactly what it should look like. It's almost dead soft. So yeah, that we can work with. The deer didn't turn out so well. This was the first time I'd ever tried this, and obviously I should have braised it in liquid rather than trying to cook it as I did. It's okay, nothing really special. It's tender, but that's about as much as can be said about it. What this product is the egg wash, the flour, and the breadcrumbs mixed together, put in the pan and fried. And what it turns out to be is very much taste like a French crepe, which is, crepes are sort of bland, really, and they depend much on what you put on them to give them any real flavor. But this, yeah, because of the high egg content and flour, yeah, that's very crepe-like. So that's how we're winding up thus far. I'm going to chop this up fine, scoop this out very easily, as you see, and start mixing and blending and seeing what we come up with. All of my softcover outdoor books have recipe sections in them. And even in my novels, like Until Death Do You Part, An American Family Meets Their Sicilian Cousins, I take you through Sicilian cuisine as well. And then in the Goldfarb Chronicles, which are set in West Texas, I tell you about Texas cooking. So you can find a lot out about cooking from my books. And I encourage you to make variations on your own, just like I'm doing here. And sometimes they will work well and sometimes not so hot, but you learn. And so you can put together some really original dishes from what you have at hand. We had approximately 1.25 cups of the squash meat. And so to that, I've added about half of the deer and a little salt. And that tastes reasonable like it is. It tastes pretty good, as a matter of fact. And we're going to add the buttermilk now. I have a couple of ounces here and see what that does. Once added, of course, there's no taking it back. Whatever we do with it, we don't have to work with it now. It did just fine in the bread, by the way. It did exactly what it was supposed to do. Okay, that did loosen it up a little bit. Let's see what it did for taste. It now has a little sour tint that it did not have before. The dish as a whole needs nothing in the way of sugar or fruit. It's certainly sweet enough as it is. Could do with a little clove and cinnamon, perhaps. I'm satisfied with the level of salt and sugar here. So, We have some ground cloves. Which are very pungent. We have a little cumin. Cinnamon. We're getting very nearly to the flavor profile that I'm looking for. Add just a very few red peppers. Very few indeed. I like a little more heat than I've got. Although you do get some residual heat from these. But you do get flavor from those. And here we have our dish, hot or cold, a butternut squash deer mash. Well, we have accomplished what we set out to do. We have our new interesting tasting butternut squash deer mash dish. We have a couple of pitiful looking deer steaks over here, which did fine when incorporated in this, by themselves not so hot. Our soda bread over here did good. It is brown both on top and in the interior, probably because of the canola oil we used, and also the egg added would have darkened it a little bit. And we have salvaged what otherwise might have been thrown away, which turns out to be a crepe. We have salvaged the skin of the squash, and from it we have made a dessert. And this is the cut up skin plus pieces of our crepe diced in about 1/4 inch pieces, as well as raisins. And this is a dessert that can be served hot or cold, and if hot, with a little milk or cream, and would do very well indeed. So this makes for a complete utilization of our squash, except for a very tiny amount of stem. Now, I mentioned to you when we started that there was a way, even if you did not have a deer license, that if you act in a hurry, you still might wind up with deer meat. In the U.S., it is illegal to sell wild game meat, any sort. But there is one exception. If you are a deer processor and you have unclaimed meat in your possession at the end of the season, that meat you can sell to anyone. And that way, even though you may not be a hunter, you could wind up with some meat perhaps this season if you act in a hurry. Just go find your processors, ask what they've got, Do they have any for sale? They may or may not by now, but they may in states where deer seasons are still terminating now. And see if you can get yourself some deer meat. If not, certainly consider it for next season. But now, this is Hovey Smith, reminding you to hunt what you eat and eat what you hunt. Be legal, be ethical, be safe, goodbye, God bless, and see you next time.